Alright guys, Slasher September continues on. We have a few more days left. So, the last horror film from 1982, also called Fanatic, is a fun movie, man. Much like Maniac, which this also stars Joe Spinell and Caroline Munro. This was referred to when I was, like, in my teens, maybe. Like, a lot of people called this Maniac too. And you could see why. Vinny Durand here, played by Spinell, Spinell just has a way of conveying like emotional torture and craziness in such a way that it's really breathtaking, like watching him act. And it's really unfortunate that he died so, not young, but like young into his career. Because I would love to see like some later aged performances like in horror movies from Joe Spinell. That would be awesome. But he is so good in this. This, I think, trumps his performance in Maniac. I think Vinny Durand is his best performance here. Now, this was shot just like Maniac, without permits and guerrilla style, at the 1981 Cannes Film Festival in France, which it adds like just like Maniac. This is what I'm saying. Like, I could see why this is somehow marketed in some places as Maniac too. It has that same raw feeling to it, but it's not as like greasy and grimy because it's not set in like late 70s, early 80s New York City. It has more of a glitzy feel to it, which I feel works wonders because it contrasts perfectly with just Vinny's descent into just complete insanity here. If anybody hasn't seen the last horror film or Fanatic, brief synopsis before spoilers. Basically, we have Vinny Durand, played by Spinell, who is a New York taxi cab driver, and he wants to make a horror film. And he is obsessed with a horror actress, Jana Bates, in this, and played by Caroline Munro. And he ends up following her to the Cannes Film Festival in 1981, and killings start happening in and around the festival. It's basically all you need to know, and just for Joe Spinell and Caroline Munro's performances, you should see this movie just for that. But let's talk the last horror film from 1982. I always think it's 81, but it's because it was filmed in 81 at the festival. 82. Now, fun fact, the mother of Joe Spinell in real life plays Vinny's mother in this. So he's acting with his mom here. She is phenomenal in this movie. Like, she puts on a great performance. Old woman, but like she has, I guess, just because she's acting with her son, like so it comes off so natural. It really feels like she's worried about her son's like well-being and mind state, and how she keeps like getting calls from him when he's at various states of mental decay, I guess is the best way to say it. She's asking like, Vinny, you sound crazy. Like, are you all right? Like, all of her scenes are fantastic, and she might have like one of the best ending lines in a slasher film ever. So, speaking of slasher, this definitely fits the slasher film mold for sure. But it's more than a slasher for me. Same with Maniac. Maniac isn't just a slasher film to me. It's a deep character study into Frank's deranged mind. Same thing here. Like, this is more of a character study than a straight slasher film. And because of it, it feels a lot more high budget than the other slashers that were being made in the early 80s. Now, this is an earlier example than ones I usually cite, like Lucio Fulci's Cat in the Brain, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. This is 1981 this was filmed. This is another example of a meta horror film that works brilliantly for me. There's a lot of meta stuff in here. Like, it takes place at the Cannes Film Festival, and it actually was shot there. There's a lot of stuff to do with the movie industry in here, and just making films and the shady dealings and stuff that go on behind closed doors. Then you have Jana Bates, this huge star of horror films that Vinny becomes obsessed with. And she just won an award for a movie she did called Scream. So I think that's kind of funny. Spinell just blows me away. How he just acts crazy so naturally. The way he talks and mumbles to himself, like just like he did in Maniac. I think he does it even better here. Just mumbles thoughts to himself, but like you're hearing these thoughts. He's like, Jana Bates, she's a good movie star. She's a great horror movie star. I'm going to have her in my horror. And the way he just rambles on, he sounds like a fucking nutcase. And it just works so well. God, man, I really wish he was in more things. This was, if I recall correctly, the last film that was released before he died. So this was his last film. Sad. But Vinny Durand lives in New York City as a taxi driver, and he ends up going to the Cannes Film Festival after becoming obsessed with Jana Bates, this horror horror movie actress. Now, there is some social commentary in this on, horror movies and media. Does it influence or create, murderers and crime and stuff like that? It's not heavy-handed or anything, but it's the only reason at the beginning here we get the little, a news report or something that talks about Ronald Reagan's attempted assassination and why did Hinkle do it, and it was supposedly being obsessed with Jodie Foster from Taxi Driver. And the only reason that's there is for a scene later on in a press conference for Jana to be asked by somebody, like a news reporter, the question, like, do you feel like your horror films can influence someone to be a maniac and stuff? It's the only reason any of it's here. It works. It's not heavy-handed, like I said, but I mean, I really don't care for social commentary in my movies, unless it's something I'm looking for in a film. Something that I always wonder with this movie, and it's fun to think about. In his mind, Vinny is this brilliant director, this horror director, and he needs to have Jana Bates, her only, specifically, and just her, in his horror film that he's making. I think it's The Loves of Dracula. Something stupid. Not a good title at all. And I always wonder, does he really have talent? This guy can stalk the shit out of somebody. Let me tell you that. He's got talent on some level. And then in the end, when we see the way that he set-dressed the castle where he takes her, it looks fucking good. So does he really have genuine talent? And he's just misunderstood by everybody and put down and not given a chance and he snaps? Or is it just all in his head and he's just completely delusional? Kind of like Pauline, Annalyn McCord's character from Excision, where she's completely delusional about being a surgeon. And she has no medical training or anything like that. It's a complete fantasy for her. I don't know here. Like I said, he shows a little bit of talent. He's a smart guy. He's fucking meticulous. He's cunning. But is he a good director? I mean, that's not an important question, but it's something I think of. I like all the dream sequences in this movie. They're not dream sequences. They're just hallucinations or taunting thoughts that you get to see Vinny experiencing of just another version of himself, the version he sees himself as, pimped out, with this cool hat. He was just hotshot director, is what he wants to be. And then you see what he thinks of himself, what he really is, and this pathetic man. And then as people start dying, they start making fun of him in these, dream sequences. I love all of Spinell's acting in all of this. There's not a bad scene at all in this movie. Especially when Spinell is on screen. But all of those sequences are really well done. And yeah, we're just 5 minutes into this movie. So, see what I said the other day? I wasn't feeling talky. That's when it all comes out. Finally, when I get back to a spoiler video. Another fun fact for you. The pimped out, cool looking apartment that Vinny stays in while he's in France at the Cannes Film Festival was Joe Spinell's actual apartment in New York City. So that was his own place they were using to shoot it. Another fun fact for you. Yeah, I researched this shit. In the beginning and throughout the festival, you can see signs for the movie Possession from 1981, which is a goddamn phenomenal movie. If people haven't seen that. But later on in the movie, during the award ceremony, when he's about to announce Jana Bates, he says it's the first horror film to win an award at the Cannes Film Festival. That year, while they were filming this, I'm not even going to try to say her name, I always forget, but the wife of Sam Neill in Possession. She won Best Actress or something for a horror film for Possession at the Cannes Film Festival. So that's interesting that they wrote that in here as that she's the first actress to win an award for a horror film. And that year while they were filming, somebody actually won for a horror film. Just thought it was interesting, so I paused this for a sec just to read this list off, because it's real quick unless you pause it. But they have a screening for a horror film. And another thing, all the scenes of Vinny or like screenings of a film, whether he's there watching or they're just screening a movie, the movies inside the movie like look awesome too. And there's some great gore in this movie, which this film was butchered, and they thought that they wouldn't be able to restore some of the gore in this, and they were able, by some miracle, to find like an original print and re-release it like pretty recently, maybe like 5-6 years ago. I think it was Severin. But the list during the screening that they're voting for Best Actress nominee is Jana Bates, then there's Faye Dunaway, Jane Fonda, Julie Christie, and Meryl Streep. And Jana Bates beat them all. And like pretty much everything I've seen her in, but this movie especially, Munro looks absolutely gorgeous in this movie. Like, I love her hair, like the way that it's done. She looks great in this film. Also, I like how Vinny is kind of making his horror film, and he's filming like different things, even though it kind of doesn't make as much sense like at the end, because when we get a reveal at the end, when we get there, it kind of fully doesn't make sense, but it still works. But him filming like his own movie in this deranged mind state that he descends into is great. There's some other homages in here. I mean, obviously Bates, being a not the psycho, and then the guy that she's with, like she's separated from her husband who produced most of her movies, Brett Bates. We see him a little bit. His last name is Cunningham, the new guy she's with. So, I mean, nod to Friday the 13th. So there's a lot of homages in here to other films. There's also a lot of cool establishing shots in this movie, which makes sense, given the setting being at the Cannes Film Festival. So then Brett Bates, the ex-husband of Jana, she goes over to his apartment, or wherever he's staying, and she finds his severed head in the sink in the bathroom. And before that, it's not a lot of gore in this movie, but when there is, it's good. Like, we see his throat cut, and then when she gets there, his head is severed. And he got a letter saying, "This is your last horror film," or that you made your last horror film, something like that. The killer sends these things to pretty much anyone connected to Bates and who she's worked with and producers. Now, they go to the police. Like the producer guy, I forget his name. There's so many people in this movie. But they go to the police and they say to them, like, this is the same letter, like I got, the same one that Brett Bates got. His body's missing the whole time. So it's kind of obvious. So, like, why not just talk about it? We find out at the end that Brett Bates is alive, and that his fucking severed head that she finds at the beginning of the movie here is just practical effects, and his body was not found because he was indeed alive. And he's the one killing people throughout this whole film, not Vinny. I feel like it takes a little bit away from this, but I mean, he doesn't become a full-blown killer until the end of the movie. So I guess it still kind of works. I mean, I really wish it was just him going nuts the whole time, but maybe it would be too close to Maniac. So it's a cool little twist, but I don't know how I feel about it, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. So the police just write it off as a publicity stunt at first, when the body's missing and everything, because they say that Jana Bates is a horror actress. This is a film festival. He was the one who produced our movies, so this looks like a big-ass publicity stunt. And, I mean, I could see them thinking that. I mean, it's a good cover. Like, it's a perfect time to go around killing people, I guess, during a big film festival where horror films are being shown. Another thing about this is I love the soundtrack throughout this. All the 80s disco songs just works perfectly. And then we get that scene with one of the other producers, Bernstein, getting a letter thinking that it's from Brett Bates. He goes to the movie theater and meets him where the letter tells him to meet him. And we see him get murdered. We see axe right in the back. Looks pretty good. And then it's being filmed from the projection box, so he's filming these murders. So again, you're led to believe at first that this is Vinny. His face is covered, you can't see it, and it's really Brett Bates. So Vinny's also shooting footage, like I said earlier. That's what I was saying, doesn't really make sense. So I guess if you take both of their footage and combine it together, then you have a full horror film of what went down here. But I mean, he's filming all the murders, Brett, because he's committing all these murders. All the other footage that Vinny's shooting, like, there's no murder or anything like that, except for, like, the last scene with Jana. So, like, it gets a little confusing and it makes little sense, like I said, but it is what it is. It's not something to overthink. Yeah, I just said something's not something to overthink. Man, Spinell kills it right here. Like, this was the scene I was saying earlier with the press conference, and she's being asked questions, and someone asks her about, like, violence in horror movies bleeding into society and influencing people. And while she's being asked, like, have you ever worried or prepared for having, like, an obsessed fan, like a crazy person, like, that would stalk you or come after you? And she's saying no. And we get the shots of Vinny up against a photo of her, like, caressing her body and, like, just leaning up against it, like, all creep as shit, like... He kills it. His performance is just phenomenal in this. This scene's very Maniac because he does a similar thing after killing somebody in that film, but he's watching one of the films here and it's very gory. Body parts being taken out, and he starts, like, almost vomiting in his popcorn, and he gets up and he leaves, and then he sees the director of the film and he starts threatening him. It just adds more to his deranged character. Like, he's not fully a killer, but you're thinking he is the first time that you're watching this. And you think that, oh, like, this guy can murder people, but he can't watch, like, you know, on-screen gore. It grosses him out enough for him to vomit. So then we see two more get murdered, another agent or something, and an actress. And he gets stabbed. Looks all right. But then she gets shot in the back of the head, and that looks fantastic. Like, what a great shot. Like, she gets shot, you see the back of her head blow, like, real quick, and then she falls off the building, like, and just splats on the ground. Fantastic. The entire scene when Vinny comes in with champagne, breaks into Jana Bates' place where she's staying, and his dialogue to her, just one of the best scenes of the movie. And she is freaked out. Like, he catches her in the shower, so she's got a towel around her, and he just starts saying, like, I have this film and I want you to be in it. And just Spinell being amazing at being Spinell. She freaks the hell out, and she escapes and runs down the Cannes Film Festival in her towel. And it's great because everybody thinks this is a publicity stunt too. They all see him chasing her after, like, a nice long chase sequence down, like, these like circular stairs that go all the way down, and they rush into the lobby, and all these people start clapping and saying, like, it's Jana Bates. She's screaming, he's trying to kill me, and, like, he stops, and then he has, like, a hallucination, but, like, they're all clapping for him. Like, it's some funny stuff. It's great. After she runs a shit ton, like, she travels mad distance, she ends up getting to where her lover is, Cunningham. Vinny is eavesdropping. He's, like, at their hotel room, and he hears them say that they're going to go to a music friend of his. He owns a castle, and they're going to go to this castle the next day. So now he gets his plans ready, and he heads over to this castle. Vinny almost gets caught, and he's filming the whole time. He's carrying his camera. This is why none of this really makes sense at the end. But he's trying to get into the castle to find Jana, and somebody sees him, and he ends up running, and they take a shot at him. He walks into someone, and he ends up using him as like a shield, and he gets shot in the head. Now, I don't remember a lot of the gore in this, and that's probably because, when did I first see this? It was after Maniac. It had to be like late teens, maybe. So I don't remember it with like the added gore in it, like it has now, like since they restored it. But he gets shot in the head, and he's dead, this random dude. And this is when it starts to heavily give it away that maybe Vinny isn't doing this, because they really start pushing the whole, like, they keep saying repeatedly throughout this movie that, like, the body of Brett Bates has still not been found, and he was likely the first victim and everything. So, like, it really isn't too subtle, but it's not, like, so in your face that you see it coming, like, a mile away. When he kidnaps Jana at the awards, and this is another thing, you know that there's a deranged maniac out there at the festival trying to kill you or do something with you, because he's killing everyone else around you, apparently. They don't know it's Brett. You're still going to the award ceremony? I don't care what award it is, man. I mean, mail that shit home to me. Like, I'm gonna go home and be safe and not be around a deranged killer. Are you serious? But they have to stay for some reason. They do think of a good idea of using a decoy that conveniently, at the very beginning of the movie, you wouldn't even remember this, says that this woman looks just like Jana. So Cunningham ends up using this decoy woman to sit, in the crowd and pretend to be Jana and have her wait backstage. Vinny's smarter than that. He comes out, he chloroforms her. I don't know where he bought chloroform, or he couldn't have bought it unless he snuck that shit like somewhere good, like on the flight over there or something. I don't know, but he chloroforms her, and he ends up kidnapping her and taking her back to that castle the musician friend owns, because they also conveniently said, and Vinny wasn't even around, I don't think, to hear this, that they were leaving like the next day. Like, and they were shutting the whole place down. So no one's there. And like I said, he dresses this place up like beautifully with candles all over the place. And I usually hate candles, but this is for his film. So it fits the context. Again, this goes back to the pointless but interesting debate on whether he has talent as a director. Because when he even sets up practical effects, because you think at first that in that beautiful room with all the candles, she's laying in like a coffin, and he's wearing a Dracula, cape and stuff, and he starts driving a stake in her heart, and she starts bleeding. So you think he's killing her, but then she comes out of this like contraption, and then she comes to. So she was like out this whole time. But he films this, and it looks good. Does he have talent or not? Let me know what you think. Then this is when we get the reveal that Brett Bates is alive and that he's been murdering everybody. And conveniently, he says that he has this deranged fanboy who showed up that he can pin all of these murders on. He's going to make it look like he killed Jana, then killed himself, Vinny. So this is his grand plan, but it doesn't work out because he ends up trying to kill Jana, and Vinny tells her to run. She gets free. She runs off, and then he grabs a chainsaw, Vinny, and he slashes this guy twice and then decapitates him with the chainsaw. It looks really good. Like, again, I don't remember the added gore in this. I don't remember it being this good. Then he has like a little dream sequence hallucination where he's thrown an award, finally, from his director vision of himself. Then we get just an hysterical ending, and this has to be a dream sequence or something, right? Like, it has to be. That's the way I've always seen it. Because he just chainsawed a motherfucker's head off. I don't care what, like, self-defense, he was trying to save, her life and stuff. That's excessive force, if there ever is excessive force. So there's no way they just let him go, right? Like, it's not possible. But after he decapitates the guy, then it freeze frames, and it ends his movie. And him and his mom are watching this movie. And then he starts trying to pitch this other idea. He's like, that's the last horror film I'll make. And he starts pitching like a space idea. And the mom keeps trying to butt in. She's like, Vinny. And then she just ends it with this line. She's like, you got a joint? And then he's been smoking on one. He just hands it over to her, and she's smoking on a joint. And then this funny, like, honky tonk piano music kicks in. That's how it ends. It's such a good movie. It's such a fun movie. The performances are fantastic. And it's just a great character study. Like, just like Maniac. Like, I put this on the same level as Maniac. I can't put one higher than the other. But I will say, and I've said before, this is Joe Spinell's best performance. Like, for me, 100%. But that is the last horror film or Fanatic, whatever one you heard first. I'll probably not get to Murder Rock tonight, but I'll get that in The Forest out tomorrow. So, alright guys, wherever you're from, hope you're having a good morning, afternoon, or night. I will talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.